A developer's website, a place where you come to learn about a developer. It's their digital garden, where they show off projects, where they blog, and where you can get in contact with them. In this video, I'm going to show you how you can build a markdown and MDX-powered Next.js personal site. On top of that, I'm going to show you how you can use TinaCMS to have contextual editing on each page. This allows you to see exactly what you're editing versus other headless CMSs where you basically enter that information into a form and retrieve it from a database. If you're excited to see what get-backed content looks like, here's a quick video. So now you've seen what we're going to be building, let's start by dropping into our terminal. So step one in our developer blog is to create our application. Now, Tina has provided a way to bootstrap an application, so we're going to use that to start our project. The command we're going to use is MDX create Tina app at latest. And it's going to ask us a series of questions, and we're going to use those to start our application. So first it's going to ask us if we want yarn or npm. I'm a fan of yarn, so I'm going to select yarn. Then we're going to give it a name, so we can call this my developer site. And it's going to ask us which starter we're going to use. So we're going to pick the bare bones starter here. Now the reason is it is a very basic implementation of Tina and doesn't have any extra content. Unlike this Tailwind starter that has a landing page and other things, and the documentation starter is a way to get started if you are writing documentation. So hit enter on barebones starter and it will install everything. And once we get to that point, I will meet you back here and we can talk about what to do next. So here we are in our application. What I've done is open the index.js file to just talk about a few things around Tina so that you can understand before you see it in action and before we do any work. So here is our Tina powered page. We have this query here which uses GraphQL to retrieve the data from our page, which is in content and page. We have this home.mdx, which currently has the word "this is a test" in it. Then down here we have get static props, which if you're familiar with Next.js, you've seen many times on my channel. And what we're doing is we're using this static request, which is a Tina helper, to grab the data that we need from our GraphQL layer and return it as a prop called data. This data is then passed in through props, and then we use this use Tina hook. And this use Tina hook essentially allows you to edit the page and then make all the changes that you need and then hit save. And that content is then stored in an MDX file. Now we have this return, which has this Tina markdown component. Now this is a component that we've created, which allows you to use the full power of MDX, but you don't have to worry about using something like Remark or Remote MDX to convert it into HTML and display it on the screen. All of that's taken care of. So it currently just has this content, and that's taking in from this data, get page document, data.body. So that's the basic part of how to sort of use the content. But we have this query here, and you might be wondering, where does that come from? So we have this .tina folder here, and inside of it, you'll see this schema.typescript. And inside of here is where you actually define your whole schema and everything that you want to be able to retrieve or edit on the page. So in our example for that index page, which is under that content/page, we're saying it has a field which has the name of body, which is what you use to retrieve from GraphQL. We give it a label, which you'll see in a second. We give it a type, and then is it the body of the page? And then we set it to true. And using this generates all sorts of GraphQL schemas, queries that you can run, and the types. So if you're using a TypeScript application, you can use that to pull in the types that you need to make TypeScript happy. So that's the basics of Tina. The rest is all driven by these MDX files or markdown files, depending on what you're using. So now what we're going to do is actually launch this application. And to do that, you just do yarn dev like any other application, and two things are going to happen. The first thing is Tina's going to spin up its own version of a GraphQL server, which will be on port 4001. And then it's going to also launch our Next.js application. So let's go ahead and do that. So here's the application. And as you can see, we have this is a test. We have a home and a posts. And the posts takes us to hello world, which also has some details. The power of Tina is more about the editing experience, at least from the user's perspective. So if I click edit with Tina here and click enter edit mode, it will reload the page and give us the ability to actually edit on page. So I can delete this and say, hello, welcome to Tina. I could add an H1, make that an H1 there. We can add code blocks if we really wanted to. This is a code block. We can also add links. We can bold, italic, add numbers, welcome, etc. You get the point. You can edit this, which is great. And when you hit save, what happens is we save that into that MDX file of choice. So in this version, it happens to be this index.js version. So let's look at that real quick in our code. And as you can see now, it's all changed. We've got this hello, welcome to Tina. This is a code block. And here are some numbers. So that's the basic idea of how Tina sort of works as a whole. So now we really need to dig in to start creating our developer site and all the things we might need. I think the first, probably most important piece of this puzzle is to talk about the app.js and what edits we can make out of the box to make it more friendly for when we're ready to deploy. So the first thing we can do is get rid of this edit button. So if I just delete this out, it won't show that little blue ticker on the left-hand side of the screen that said edit with Tina. If for some reason you did want that on your page, you can do that by just doing show edit button equals true. Now we have that, let's talk about what's happening inside of our edit provider. So we have this TinaCMS here, and we're passing in an API URL. So this API URL by default in development mode is localhost 4001/GraphQL, which is what we talked about previously. Then when you deploy this out using Tina Cloud, we actually give you a new version of this, which is content.tinajs.io/content/your client ID, which we'll show you about in the future, /GitHub, and then the branch that you want to be working on. That gives you an idea of how this all works. And this part only runs when you're in edit mode, and then just the regular website will run when you aren't in that admin edit mode. So now app.js is covered, let's talk about the admin screen. This is provided by Tina, and it allows you to essentially log in and log out. We created a component that essentially just has a login screen. You click login, and then when you need to log out, you go to /admin/logout and click log out. So that covers all of the Tina pieces that are in our application. Now we need to really start building out our pages. So the first page we're going to work on is that home page. Sure, right now it just has this sort of body, which is great. But what we really want to do is make this more of a page builder. So you could insert maybe a hero at the top, and then your projects in the middle, and then underneath we can feature some articles from your blog posts. So that's the kind of idea that I have for this developer site, so we can start building that out. So for the index page, we're going to use something called blocks, and this block-based editing experience that Tina provides allows you to essentially create predefined page sections and have them be inserted as many times as you want on a page. And then you can edit them, save them, change things on them, and those will get passed into your MDX. The first thing we want to do is import type here. And that's going to be a Tina template from @TinaCMS CLI. And that's just to tell Tina that we're going to be using some Tina templates here. Now to create a block, you can just create a const here and give it a name. So we're going to call this one the hero block. And that's going to be the top section that you saw that has the title, has a little subheading, has a description and a picture. Then we're going to do Tina template equals, and then our object. And inside of our object, we're going to give it a name. So we're going to give this a name of hero. Then we're going to give it a label, and we're going to say hero block. And this label is what the user sees when they're trying to add these. And then we're going to add some fields. And our fields are everything that we want to be able to retrieve through the GraphQL layer and also edit. So we can do type here, and we're going to give it a type of string, and that's going to be our heading. So we can give it a label, give it heading, and then give it a name. And the name is what you retrieve from the GraphQL. So we can just call it heading. And then make sure that you wrap each one of these as an object. And then we can take this and we can do a little copy and paste here. And we give this one a subheading and subheading. And let's make this label a bit easier to read. So we can say subheading. We'll give this label heading. And then we're going to use the next one is going to be description, but we're going to do something different here. So one power of Tina is that you get to set the kind of UI component that you want the user to see. So with a description, it could be incredibly long. So what we could do is say, we want this to be a text area field instead of just a standard input field. So underneath your name, we can do UI, open up an object and say component, text area. And that will give us a text area based option. And then we're going to hit save. And we still need to implement an image, but for now, we just need to start with this part, and then we can talk about how images work through Media Manager. Now we have the basic part of our hero block. Now we actually need to use the hero block in our page itself. From here, we can take this hero block and go down into our page here. And instead of having this body, main, rich text, etc., we can actually just pass in our blocks as sort of templates. So to do that, here in our fields, we're going to do an object. I'm going to say type is object because these are objects. We're going to give it a list of true because we want them to be able to select as many as they want. Then we can give it a name and say blocks. We'll give it a label here and we'll call it sections because we want the users to understand that it's actually a section of a page versus blocks, which they may not know what that means. And then finally, templates is where you pass in what templates you want. So in our example for now, hero blocks. Now, if we hit save, this is actually ready to be used. But now we need to update our query in our page. So if you go to pages and go to index.js, this query right now doesn't actually make sense. So let's update this query and make sure that it makes sense and can be used with our blocks. To make this easier, let's go to our localhost 4001/LTR and we can do it from there. So localhost 4001/LTR. So here we are inside of our GraphQL client where we can start to make our new query. So the first thing we want to do is go back and grab our query here, just the beginning part that tells it get page document relative path. That's the part we're going to need. And then we can go back in and use that as part of our query. So we can do query, get page document, and then close out our parameters there and say we need to get data, which holds all the data for the page. And then we're going to need the blocks, which is what we called in our schema. We called it blocks. And then inside of here is where we can start to add in all the pieces that we need. But we only have one block type right now. However, we'll be adding more. So the first thing we need to do is do __ type name. And then underneath that, ... on page blocks hero, because that's what we called it. And then we just need to tell it what we want returned. So heading, subheading, description, and that's all we have. And if we run this query, right now we get nothing back. And that's because we don't have any of this on our page, which is fine. So let's grab this query and we can just grab it from here down, copy that and go back to our page here and paste it right in here. So now we have our query squared away here. We now need to work on this section down here. So what we're going to do here is remove out Tina Markdown. We're going to remove this body as well. And then we can start working on creating a way to essentially use these blocks however we want. First, we can make sure there's some data. And then we can make sure that data.getPageDocument.data.blocks. And if that's true, we can use this query here and map over all the block items. So we do .map and then say function block, I, and then inside of here, we can write our function. So we're going to use a switch statement here, and we can do block._type name, and that'll give us access to what kind of type name it is. So is it a page block, or if we have extras, what would they be? So inside of that, we can say case page blocks hero, which is the query here. Page blocks hero matches here. And then return. So inside of this return statement, we can do a fragment, which I'm using from React. And then add a key here and say I plus block__ type name. And make sure you put a dot here. And then inside of our fragment, we can return our details. So we can just say block.heading. We can copy that and drop it down and say this is a subheading and this is our description. Now what we can do is launch our application and start adding blocks and see how it works on the page. So I've launched the application, and now if I click the edit button and click sections here, you now see that there's a hero block, which is what we named it. We click on it and we can start adding stuff in. So heading, subheading, a nice description. And then we can go back and we can add another one if we wanted to and say second heading, sub second, and a bunch of characters. And now we can rearrange these as we see fit. So you can see them moving around on the screen. And then when we hit save, that now adds it to the MDX. So if we go and look at the MDX right now and go here, you can see that they've added those as blocks. So you've now created your first block, which allows you to build whatever you want with pages. So we're going to create 2 more blocks, and then we're going to work on using all of that together, create a nice UI, and then we can start working on our block. So the next block we want to build is a projects block, and this projects block is going to be a little different than our hero block. It's still going to have a heading, a subheading, but it's also going to have something called a list. And this list is going to contain the items such as an image, name, description, and link out to this project. So let's start in the same way we did with this. It's very, very similar. So we can start by doing const and call this project section. It's going to be a Tina template. And inside of here, we can give it a name. So we'll give it projects as the name. We'll give it a label and we'll say projects section. And then we'll give it the fields. Now to speed this up a little bit, what we're going to do is we're going to grab the heading and subheadings here and just drop those in because we're going to reuse those. And then we can start working on this list object. So the way this works is we're going to create a type of object, and that object is going to hold all of the data that we need. So now we have a type of object, then we need to give it a label. So we're going to call this project items. We're going to give it a name. So we'll just call this items. And then we're going to set it to list true. And then we give it its fields. Now the fields here are going to be all the pieces of content for each item that you want. So what we want here is we're going to want a name of image. And that's a label. We'll give it a label of project image. And then we'll give it a type of image. Now you haven't seen this image before, and that's intentional. We are going to put one in here in the near future, but I want it to cover it in a single option, and then we can go back and add it wherever we need it. So now we have an image. We also need a name of the project. So we can give it a name of name. And remember, the name is what query you use, and the label is what you see in the UI. So this will be content, name, type will be string. Then similar as before, here we have this description. So we're going to use that as well. And that'll be a description of the project. And then finally, we just need a link. So we can do a type of string. So we can copy this, drop it down here and say link URL. We'll give it a name of href and then string and hit save. So now we have another block built out that we can now use wherever we want. So all we have to do is go to our templates here, hit comma, and say we want to use project section, hit save. So now it's added to our schema. We can use it in our index page in this section here. So similar to the page block hero, we can do ... on page, and then we do blocks. And then the name here comes from the label that we gave it. So here it's called projects. So it will be page block projects. And then inside of here is where we can grab whatever we want. So we've got a heading, subheading. Then we need items. And then inside the items, it's going to be each one of these. So we've got image, name, description, and then href. So be image, name, description, href, and hit save. And now this is now available to be added to this switch statement. So we can do another case here and say case, page, blocks, projects, return, and then return whatever we want here. So we can do another fragment, do a key, in case we want to add a bunch of them, block dot underscore type name. And then inside of here, we can add all of our different sections. So we can do a div here for heading and subheading. In fact, we can copy and paste that from above. And because we got a section of items, we can actually map over those. We can do block dot items dot map, and then we can just give it item and arrow and then return. Inside of our return statement, we can add another fragment here, and we can just give it a key item dot name, and then inside of our fragment is where we can do the rest of our work. So we can close this out. And inside this fragment, we can do a div, and this div will have the item.image. We can copy this down a little bit. And this one will be the name. This one will be the description. And this one will be the href. and hit save. So now we have this. Thinking about how this works, we're going to need to put an optional here to stop it from trying to find this, because when you first insert a page block, it's not going to have any items until you tell it that you want an item. So we'll put a question mark here, and that will stop this from running unless there's actually items. So we can launch our application now and take a look. So I've launched the application, and now we have hero block or project section. Let's select project section. Let's give it a heading. So heading, subheading, and now we can add these items. So we can say item, click it. And you'll notice this project image now has this drag and drop or click to select file. If you click this right now, you'll get this no media stored. To use Media Manager, please configure it. And that's next on our list. So close that and give it a content name for now. So content 1 and hello, and then HTTPS google.com. And if we save this, the document will get saved, but we can add another one here underneath. So this is content 1. We can add another one, say content 2. Hello again, and then bing.com, hit save. And what's cool about this is now that this is a list item, we can actually rearrange these as well. So now we have rearrangeable items and then nested rearrangeable items, hit save, and now we have a couple items. So let's start working on images next, and then we can do our final block, and then we can start styling so that we can actually have a decent looking homepage. So Tina has the ability to manage your media. That means that you can upload by dragging and dropping, you can replace images on the fly, you can search through folders to find the right image, etc., etc. So the first thing we need to do is set that up. Now, currently TinaCMS only supports Cloudinary. So this is an assumption that you have a Cloudinary account. If you don't, sign up for one. They have a very extensive free plan. And once you've done that, come back and then we can talk about what to do next. So we need to install our package, which is yarn add next TinaCMS-Cloudinary. Once that's installed, we can talk about how that gets set up and how everything works together. So now that package is installed, we can go ahead and close our terminal for now, and we can go inside our app.js. Now the way this works is essentially we tell TinaCMS in here what kind of CMS stores we want to use or any overrides we might have. So we want to use something called media store. Usually you'd import it at the top and do that kind of stuff, but we only ever want this store to be run if you're in edit mode. So we can dynamically load this as we see fit. We can do media store equals, and then inside of here we can do an asynchronous function to load this in. So we can do async and then const pack equals await import, and then we can import that package we just installed, which is next TinaCMS Cloudinary, and then underneath it we can just do return pack.tinacloud Cloudinary media store, and that's it. Now we have the ability to use Cloudinary, sort of. So if you launch your application right now and go and take a look, what you'll see is instead of just having a blank image, if you had an image already, it would load, but there's still an issue that you'll run into. So if I launch the application and refresh the page, so our Tina app loads in, we can take a look and see what happens. So if I edit here and go to a project section and click here, you'll see you'll get this, the Cloudinary API route is missing or misconfigured. And that's because we actually have to have a way to upload and retrieve these images. And luckily Next has an API route that we can use. So we're going to add an API route here that handles all of the Cloudinary integration. So we need to install one more package here, and that's called the TinaCMS auth package. So we can do that by doing yarn add at TinaCMS/auth. So now that's installed, it will handle our authentication for us. We can do a new folder here called API/Cloudinary. And then inside our Cloudinary, we need to do a new file and we need to do a spread. And we call it media. init.js. And inside of here is where we're going to handle if the user is authenticated or we're local, we can do something else, do something else. So we just need to import media handler config and create media handler. And that's going to come from Next, TinaCMS, Cloudinary /dist/handlers. And on top of that, we are also going to need to import isAuthorized from @TinaCMS/auth. So now we have those, we can do export const config equals media handler config, and then we can export default, create media handler, and then inside of here is where we do our media handler. So there's going to be some things we need. So there's going to be a cloud name, API key, and API secret. And those come from the Cloudinary dashboard. And I'll show you where to get those in a second. All we need to do is say authorized and say async reg. And then we just need to check to see if they are authorized or they are not. So we can write an if statement here that basically checks to see if we're at localhost. So if we're at localhost, it doesn't really matter. It's you developing, you should be also authorized. Else, we should do something else. So what we can do, we can say if something here, return true. Otherwise, we need to actually try and authorize the user with Tina Cloud. So when we deploy this out at the end, it's going to live in Tina Cloud. So that means you can invite as many authors as you like. So let's say, for example, somebody manages to stumble upon your admin route and they're trying to upload, or they figure out that this is an API route that you have, and they try and upload some malicious images. Well, first we need to check to see if they're authorized. So you can just do const user equals await is authorized and the request, and then say return user and user.verify. So they have to be a user and they also have to be verified, otherwise catch console log E, and we just need to pass the E down, return false. So now we have all of that. Now all we need to do is essentially check to make sure that they are authorized. Now in here, if we just do this, then we know for sure, right? If process.env.nodeenv equals development, do this, otherwise do that. So we can use the same example here and say if equals development, return true, otherwise go through this route. Now, if we go ahead and launch our application, it still won't work because we need these pieces of information. So I'm going to load up Cloudinary and show you where to get those. So when you launch the Cloudinary, you'll see that you have a cloud name, API key, and API secret. So you're going to need all three of those and place them in environmentals. I'm going to give you the environmentals on the screen, and then you can just fill them out. So back in our code, we can create a .env.local, so .env.local. And inside of here, we're going to have next public Cloudinary name. We're going to have next public Cloudinary API key and Cloudinary API secret. So go ahead and fill those in. And then what you're going to do is go back in here and say cloud name equals process.env Cloudinary name, process.env, next public Cloudinary API key, and the last one will be Cloudinary secret. So process .env.cloudinary API secret and hit save. Make sure you put your commas in, hit save, and just one more time, these two are going to be public and this one is a complete secret. So put those in and then you'll be good to go and we'll be able to use Cloudinary. I'll meet you back in our launch application to show you how it looks when you upload to Cloudinary and when you use the Cloudinary part of our media manager. So we're back in the application and I've just selected the first item here. And now you can see that these are all my images from Cloudinary. So I can just select this one, click insert, and you can see the URL is right here. And if I hit save, that will now get saved. And I can click it again and change it to a different image or upload a brand new one. So now we have images. We have 2 block contents. We need to do 1 more block content, and then we can start styling our application. So we're back in our Tina schema, and the first thing we want to do is add the ability to have an image on our hero. So underneath here, we can add type, image, name, image, label, hero image. Hit save, and now we have the ability to add images as well as the rest of the stuff. So the final part of the blocks, which I think is pretty cool, is going to be the ability to add a feature set of blog posts that you've written. This means that you can keep them up to date, change them, choose different ones each time, and have your users click the content you want them to read. So again, we're going to create a new section here. We're going to call it feature section. That's obviously going to be a Tina template, just like our last sets. And then inside of here, we can give it a name. So we're going to call it features, and we'll give it a label of featured articles. And then we can give it its fields. Now the fields here are going to be, one, it's going to be an object first, a list, similar to the list we have here. So we can kind of copy this part down. And then we can just give it a different label. So we're going to call this featured items. And then inside of our fields, we're going to have a image. So we'll call this image, label is featured image, and then the type could be image, and then underneath that we're going to need the title, so we can give it a name, title, going to give it a label, say featured title, type is string. And then underneath that, we're going to need the author and the category. So we can copy this, drop it down, change this to author. And this is the assumption that maybe you have somebody else come and write on your blog, and it could just be you every time. And then we need a category. So we can do category, featured category, and that will be a string. And then we need our description. So we can grab that from here. Same idea, component text area so that you get a nice editing experience. And then finally, we have a link. So we'll just do the same one here, link, href, URL. And that's everything that we need for our fields here. And then we just need to make sure we close out our fields and then our object, and hit save. And now we have a featured articles that we can use, and make sure we edit that to be a lowercase label. So now we can drop this feature section right in our blocks as we did before. And you can see how it speeds up. The first one took a little while because we had to figure out how templates worked. Then the second one was a bit faster. And the third one, we had some reusable pieces. So we're pretty much done. So now we have all of that. We just need to update our query here. So underneath this one, we can do ... on page blocks. And then we can just check what we called the actual page blocks. And we gave it the name of features. So it will match that. So it'll be page blocks features. And then inside of here, we just need items. And inside there, we need image, title, author, category, description, href, and hit save. And then we can just add another block here that could handle that as well. So we can do a new case, and we'll just copy this one. We'll drop it down here and say this needs to be, if it's a page blocks features. Inside of our fragment here, we actually just need to map over each of the items. So we don't need this part. So we can change this to title, and then we can have image, title, author, category. And then underneath the category, we'll have a description and an href. And hit save. So that's all of our blocks done. So now we have this ability to build pages as we see fit. So if we decided today that we wanted to have another hero, we could add another hero with different ideas. And in theory, you could reuse this however you wanted. If you wanted to, you could change this from an index to maybe a file name.js and build it using getStaticPaths so that you could have unlimited pages as you see fit. But for this project, we're only having a landing page and a block. So let's launch the application and check out to make sure that that works, and then we can start styling. So we launched our application. I've deleted all the items out to make it easy. Click the features, add a new item. I'll add an image, and that'll insert the URL for us. And we can say featured, title, author, tutorials, really long description, and then a URL. If we hit save, document is saved, and now we have that, and we can add additional ones as we see fit. So everything is working. We are at the point now where we could style our pages out and start working on that. And we're going to use Chakra-UI for this because I think it's great. And you can choose to use Tailwind or whatever you feel like. But for this, we're going to use Chakra-UI because it allows me to move quickly. So I've split the screen for a second. Let's talk about Chakra-UI. It allows you to build components very quickly and allows you to have accessibility. And I think it's one of the best React-based UI component libraries out there. So to get started, all we need to do is click this Next.js and copy the installation from here. I will make sure in the description that there is a copyable version of this, but you can also find it at chakra-ui.com. Once these have installed, we can work on our app.js, which will allow us to wrap everything in our Chakra-UI provider. So inside of our app.js, we just need to import the Chakra provider, and that comes from app Chakra-UI/React. And then we just need to wrap our application in it so that we can use it all throughout. So we can actually just change this fragment into this Chakra provider. And then I need to fix it because it should be an uppercase C for the provider. And make sure I fix that up here as well. And now we have this provider. That means that we can use Chakra wherever we feel like. It will override the styles and everything like that. So now that we have Chakra-UI installed, we want to start by building out a layout. So go ahead and delete any components that were in here. There should be one, and it's called layout. Then inside of our index, we need to just remove this components layout and turn those layouts into fragments for now. And we need to do that in the post area, which is under our posts. Index and slug both have that as well. So make sure you remove all of those out because we're going to build our own and it's going to be used slightly differently. So let's kill all of those. And now we have a clean state. So Inside of your components, create a new folder, and we're going to call it layout. And then inside of that layouts, we're going to create a new file, and we're going to call it layout.tsx. And we're also going to have another folder in the near future, and it's going to be called navbar. And that navbar is going to hold all of our navbar contents. But first, let's work on this layout. So if you've never used Chakra-UI before, it allows you to essentially build components really fast using component-based versus having to do class names. So we're going to import at the top flex, and then use color mode value as mode. That's going to come from @Chakra-UI/React. So now we have this. Now we can start using it. So we're going to export const layout equals, and we're going to pass in props. And the only props we're actually passing in is the children of the page. Then we can do our return statement, and we can say flex direction equals column. So we want it in the direction of column. We want the min h, which is the min height, to be 100 of the view height. And then background is going to be mode. And then we're going to tell it, if it's in light mode, we'll use white. Otherwise, we'll use gray, 800. And then inside of our flex here, we can add a main, and that will just contain our props.children. And if we hit save, we now have this layout, and we can use it wherever we feel like. So now we have the layout, we can go back to our index.js that contains all of that data. So we can use it instead of this fragment now, so we can do layout and layout. Hit save, and then import it at the top. Import layout from /components/layout/layout. And hit save. So now we've launched the application, and it may not look any different right now, but as we build elements out, it will make sense. And as you can see, it's now kind of responsive behind the scenes. So we're on our way to making an application that is both responsive and also accessible for anybody. So the next component we're going to build is one of our options here, either the featured, projects, or hero, and I think hero would be a good place to start. So I'm going to create a new folder here as well and call this home. And inside of here is where we're going to hold all of those home components that we want to build. So this one is going to be called hero.jsx, and inside of here is where we're going to do all of our work. But first, let's just quickly log in. So /admin, enter edit mode, click the edit button, delete this out, add in a hero block, give it a heading. Let's call it James Perkins. Subheading is developer advocate. Description, helping you learn Jamstack. And then we'll add an image here. Let's just find this one, hit save, and now we have something that we can work with. So let's start working on that. So the first thing we actually really need to do is go back to the index and add in image here, because we've added that, but we didn't add it back. And then we should get images the next time we play around with it. So now we have that, let's start building out this hero. So first we need to import a few things from Chakra-UI. We're going to need boxes, headings, stack, text, use color mode, value as mode. And finally, we're going to need something called Chakra. We're also going to need next image because we want to be able to optimize these images. So we can say image from next/image. And now we can start working on the actual content. So we do export hero equals data. And then the data props is going to hold all of the data that we have here. So title, subheading, description, and then if I add an image really quickly, close this out, add another image, hit save. that image will be saved as well, and we can pass that along. So first, what we could do is say const heading, subheading, description, image, and that's going to come equal to data, and hit save. And for now, we can just do return, and we'll just return a box. And inside that box, we'll just return the text, and it will hold heading. And then underneath that text, we'll hold subheading, description, and image. And then hit save. And we can go back into our index here and import this. So import hero from /components /home/hero. And then we can use this hero inside of our element here. So we can find the hero one and say, instead of this, we can say hero, and then data equals block, and then close it out, hit save, and then we can fix this issue that we have here, and then we can go from there. So we just need to add from @Chakra-UI/React, hit save. And now you can see that everything is here. It's not styled, but it's definitely there. So now we can start building this out. So the first thing I want to build here is a section. Now this section is going to hold the whole piece and give some padding and some other minor pieces that will handle responsiveness, color mode, all those kinds of things. So I'm going to do as a section, and then we're going to do a background, and we're going to use mode for this, and we're going to say if it's in light mode, we'll use white. Otherwise, we'll use gray.800. And then padding on the top is going to be equal to, and this is a cool thing about Chakra here, we can actually state each of them, so medium, large, or the base model. So we say base, we'll do 0. For medium screens, we'll do 2. And for large, we'll do 16. And then if we hit save for now, nothing has really changed, but we still have more to do. So we'll do padding on the bottom. We'll do 24, and that'll be for everybody, regardless of size of screen. And then we can hit save here. Inside of this section, so now we have this section done, we want to do another box, and then we're going to do a max width equal to, and then on base, we'll do extra large. On medium screens or above, we'll do 7XL. Then we're also going to want to use MX equals auto so that it's centered in the screen. And then we're going to do padding on the x-axis. And for a base, we'll do 6. And for medium and above, we'll do 8. And if we hit save, we've made a mistake. We just need to add another set of parentheses here. Hit save, and there we go. So now you can see it's kind of moved into the middle of the screen. Now we have that, I want to use something called stack. And what stack does allows you to essentially stack either vertically or horizontally all the items together. So we're going to use stack here, and we're going to give it a direction equal to, on a base screen, we'll do column, large and above, we'll do row. Then we can add some spacing here. So inside of here, do spacing equals base, and we'll do 3 rem. And on bigger screens, we'll do just 2 rem. Now we have that. We need to do some margin on the top. So we'll give it 8. Then we can tell it where we want to align it. So we're going to align equal to, on a large screen only, in the center. And then finally, we can say justify equal to space between. hit save, and nothing's changed yet. And that's because we need to put this inside of our items here. And now you can see we're getting like a nice bit of spacing in between all of our items. So next what we want to do is add flex to wrap everything inside of that. So we can do inside of our stack here, we can add another box and add flex of 1 max width equal to, on a large screen, only 520 pixels. Then that's going to wrap everything inside of it. So add a box in here, hit save, and now everything's kind of tight to itself. Now we can add our heading. So Chakra-UI has heading versus H1s, and then we just set it to what we want. So this is going to be an H1. We're going to give it a size of 3XL, and then you can give it any color you want. So in this one, I'm going to use purple, but you could change this to whatever colors you prefer. So you just do mode, and then you tell it what colors that you need. So when it's on a white screen, we want this to be purple.600. And when it's on a darker screen, we want it to be purple 300. Then we're just going to add some margin on the top here of 8, font weight, extra bold to give it a nice look, and then finally letter spacing equal to tight. And then inside of that heading, we're going to use this heading, so we can get rid of this piece of text now. Delete that out, hit save, and now we have my name, and it looks pretty good. Now we need to do our subheadings. So for this, we're going to use a text, which we already have. So we can just use that and say color equal to, and I'm going to copy this to make life a little easier and say, if it's on a white screen, we'll make this 600, and on a dark screen, we'll make it 400 in gray. And then we need to just do some changes. You can see it's kind of changed color, but we also need to do some sizing and some other pieces. So we need to put font size equal to small. If we hit save now, it gets a little smaller. Font weight, we're going to set it to light to make it a little bit thinner. And that's it for our subheading. So if I zoom out to regular size, you can see that this is kind of big and this is very small. So now we have that. Now we need to do the bottom piece underneath that. Now the good thing is it's essentially the same idea as this text. So I'm going to copy this and drop it in for now. Instead of being font size small, it's going to be large. And instead of light, will be medium. And we're just going to add some margin on the top too. So margin at the top of 4. Hit save, and then that will give you a little spacing between this and all the details you want to write out. And then we just have our image. Right now, our image is just a URL. It's nothing else. So we're going to use a mix of things here. We're actually going to use Chakra-UI's own image component on top of Next.js's image optimization. So the first thing we need to do is actually kill our server. So go ahead, kill your server and go into your nextconfig.js because we need to add in a change here to allow Cloudinary images. So inside the module exports, you just type the word images. And then inside that image objects, you type the word domains. And then you just use an array of domains. So we'll just do res cloudinary.com, hit save, and then we can relaunch our server. So we can just do yarn dev. And nothing will change, except from now we'll be able to use these images wherever we want. So now we can handle images. So for the image, first we want to make a box. So we're going to do box. Position is going to be relative. We're going to have a width equal to, on a base screen, full. On a medium screen, it's going to be 560 pixels, and on a large screen, it's going to be 560 pixels as well. Then we need a height. So we do height equals base will be auto. And then on anything other than a base screen, we want it to be 360. We can copy and paste this part here, drop it in here and say 360 and hit save. And then we should fix whatever we just broke, which is there needs to be some commas here. And there we go. So nothing's changed yet, but we're going to work on that now. So inside of this box, we want just a box for now. And then inside of that, we're going to say image. And because we only want this to actually happen if there is an image. Now we have that. This is where we're going to do our image. For a second, let's just talk about this section here, where we want a box here. And we're going to make like a shadow behind the image. So we can do position is absolute. Width will be 100%. Height will be 100%. Top will equal -4. Left, -4. And then background colors is going to be based upon light or dark. We'll do gray 200, comma, gray 700. Hit save here. And it's going to break because it's complaining about this. But if we remove this out for a second, we need to make sure we close our box out. We now have this box image here. And this will all make sense in a second. So now we need to work on this section here. So inside this box, we're going to have an image. And it's only going to be rendered if there is an image. But we want to make sure that we have a way to use both Chakra-UI's awesome image styling and also the optimization from Next.js. So the way this is going to work, we're actually going to create something at the top of our page here. So underneath this data here, we're going to do something called cover image. And what this is going to use something called Chakra, which is this. And this is the Chakra factory. And what it does is essentially allows you to override stylings on other JSX or elements on the screen. So we're going to use that to override the image from next image. So we do Chakra here. And then we're going to state image. And this image is from next image. Then what we're going to do is say comma. And then open it up and say should forward prop. And this forward prop essentially allows you to forward the properties that get passed in to next image. And next image requires a few different properties. It requires the width. It requires the height. It requires the source. And it requires the alt text. And say dot includes prop. And hit save here. And now we have this cover image that we can use. I know it's complaining over there on the left-hand side, but don't worry, we're about to fix that. So we can say and then we can just say cover image, and then we can give it a z index equal to 1. Then the width equal to 560 pixels, height 360 pixels, quality we can set if we so wish, so I'll just set it to 80. Position equals relative, so relative. Object fit equals cover. Source equals image. And alt equals heading. Close out our cover image and then add that back in, hit save, and our image is now covering this section. And now we just need to figure out why it's not quite doing what we expect. Right now it's covered all of this, when really we want it over here. So the reason it's over here is because we accidentally put the box in the wrong spot. So we have a box here that we need to close out. So we can do /box. And then down here, we can delete an extra box out, hit save. And now you can see that right now it's one on top of the other. But if you open it on a big screen, it's now off to the right. So now we have off to the right. And as the screen shrinks down, so now we have it on a very tiny screen, you can see that it's all layered correctly. So now you've built this hero section. Every time you add it, you'll be able to have a nicely styled section. So if we go and change something now, so if we go in the hero block and maybe we change this section down by providing videos and blog posts. We can just say James, hit save, and that saves. And we can replace this image, but now everything works as expected. We are now ready to add another component for our home section. So underneath our hero block, let's just add a project section. And a project section will have a heading here of cool projects I've built, subheading of check them out below, and then we'll add a few items here. And I'm going to drop in a couple different images just so we have them. I'll just insert some random images from my gallery. This was a project I built, description, blah, 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 and then a link out to wherever. And let's hit save here. And now we have that on screen. Let's just move that underneath our hero block. So our heroes first, and then our projects are second. So now we're ready to create our component. So inside of here, we can create a new component called projects.jsx. And inside of here is where we're going to create our project. Import all our required fields. So we need box, flex, image, heading, text, simple grid. And I'll explain the ones you haven't seen before, such as simple grid, in a second. Use color mode value as mode. And we're also going to use link, which is not Next link, it's Chakra-UI's version of link. UI/React. So now we have all our imports. We can do export const projects equals data. And then inside of here, we can do a return statement. And for now, we can just return a single box and hit save. So now we can use this inside our index files. We can go to index. And then in our page blocks projects, we can delete all of this out and say inside of here, we want a single fragment. So we can get rid of all this and just say pass in projects and say data equals block. And we'll handle the rest on the other side. So now we have that. What we're going to do is import this at the top. So scroll up to the top and say import projects from ... components / home / projects. Hit save. We need to close out the project tag. And now we're ready to start working. So right now, everything has disappeared off the screen, and that's perfectly fine. Now we can start working in here. So right now, all that data is being passed to us. So what we can do is start by reusing some of the component-based items that we had before, making it much easier. So this box is actually going to be fairly similar to the box that we created for home. So if you look at that section, there were 3 sections in the beginning. One that was called sections, one that was called just had a base width, and then one that had flex on it. So we can actually copy and paste those in here. So this is our section, this is our box, and then this is our box with flex on it. So we can just close these out. So now we've closed all of those out. Hit save, we'll get some, as you can see, a gray line here. So what I did was added this gray, instead of white, we just changed this to gray, so gray 200. And now we can start working inside this box. So inside this box, we actually want the heading as an H1. And the size should be extra large. And the color can be, again, any color that you want, but I'm using purple and at 600 on a light screen and purple 700 on a dark screen. So now we have that. We're also going to add some margin at the top equal to 8. And text align equal to center. And font weight equal to extra bold. And then inside of here, we're just going to use data.heading, hit save, and now we have cool projects that I've built. So now you can see it's pulling in that data that we created inside of here. Cool projects that I've built, so we could delete this out, it disappears, we could call it something else. Cooler projects we've built. Hit save, and now that's what's being fed in. Now we can make the subheading. So for the subheading, we're going to use text. We're going to text align into this center. We're going to have color on this one. It's set from this color is going to be gray. So gray 600, comma gray 900. And then margin on the top of 4. Font size equal to large. And font weight, we'll just set it to medium. And then inside of here, we'll just do data.subheading, hit save, and now we have check them out below. So now we have those two sections. Underneath this box, we're going to create a simple grid. Now what a simple grid does is it makes it easier to have a grid. So instead of having to set all the column ranges and the templates and things like that, you can tell Simple Grid that I want a particular amount of columns on, say, a base screen, and then how many you want on a large screen, and it will do all of that for you. So we can do Simple Grid. We're going to add some spacing of around 14, and then we're going to have some columns here. Now these columns are going to have a base of 1, and on a large screen, so LG, there'll be 3. Then all we need is MX4 for some margin on the x-axis, and then that's it. So now we have a single grid. If I hit save, nothing's going to happen on the screen. But once we start entering in our data here, so we can say data items dot map and say item return. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to make this a link. So when we return this, you can use link here and say, here's the key. So key item dot href. href will be the same. So we can just copy and paste this part. And then style text decoration set to inherit. We can close this link out. Then inside this link, we can have all the stuff that we might need. So we're using a key here, and we're using this href, which only needs a single set of parentheses around it. There we go. So now we have key, ref, style. And then inside of here, we can use box. And a special feature of Chakra-UI is you can denote what it wants to be. So here we can say as block quote. And then we can give it rounded equals 2XL. We also need to add some color here. So let's do background equal to mode. It'll be white on a light screen and gray 700 on a dark screen. Then we need to add font color. So for the font color, we're going to have mode and then gray 800, white, and then For shadows, we'll have a large shadow here. PX will be 10, PY will be 8. And then MX will be on a base screen 2. And on a large screen, it will be 0. And now you can see that there's a box here and it's kind of clickable that goes to google.com. So if I click this or open link in new window, goes to Google. So that part works. Now we need to add something inside of here. So we're going to use flex here with a margin at the bottom of 6. And then inside of our flex, we're going to use image. And this image we can use to essentially add in some Chakra styling that we didn't use prior in the other one for this image here. So we're actually going to set object fit cover. And on top of that, we're going to use some widths and some heights that are going to be standardized. So they'll be optimized already. So we're going to use mode, weight, comma, gray, 700. Object fit equals cover. Width is 24. Height is 24. Make it square. Then we'll do rounded equals full. Color equals mode. Weight, comma, gray, 700. Then we're going to add a shadow effect here. So we can use shadow and then do 0, 0, 0, 10. And then current color. Then the source will be item image. And then the alt text will be item dot name. And if we close this image out, it should appear now. Here it is. So we've got like a nice little circle. And then underneath the circle, we're going to add another box here. So box, and then margin start equals 5. And inside this text box, we're going to add a site. So it's going to be like a site. The font style is normal. Font size is medium. Font weight is extra bold. And inside of here, we can put item dot name. And so you can see it's up here. It says, this is the project I built. And then finally, we just need our description. So underneath all of this flex here, underneath we can do text color equals mode. And then we'll just give it gray 600, comma, gray 400. And then item dot description. Hit save. And now we have the description. So if we look back here, we got a heading, a subheading, which are both here. We look at this item, the content name is here, the description and the link. So this looks fine, but something's not quite right. It feels a bit like this should be further up here. So let's take a look and see. Here is the problem. We've done a margin of 12, but if we do margin negative 12, now we get what we're looking for, which is the circle is above and sort of cutting off the section. So now if we add another one, so if we go back here, add another one, give this one some details, put another image in here, say content name is learn to code with James. This website shows you how to build cool stuff. And we can link it to my website, hit save, and then make it bigger. You can see now we have this nice evenly spaced, and each one has its own citing. So now we have that, and obviously we can switch them around as we see fit and hit save, and we can have as many projects as we want to highlight. So we have a hero section, and we also have our project section now. So those two are done. So the final section left is our featured articles. Our featured articles are going to contain all the sort of links to our own articles that we've written. In there, we're going to have the title. So for example, Clerk plus Firebase. I'm going to give it an author. We'll give it a tutorial as a category, and then the description. So this tutorial does some things, and then we'll link to that from our actual post page. And in here, we can just insert another image. And for now, I'll just set this to Google. So now we have this. Let's start working on our last featured articles. Now, before we begin, I want to add one more package, and that's the Chakra-UI icons package. So to do that, do yarn add chakra-UI/icons. And that will install that package that we can use. While that's going, we can go to our home here, add a new file, and call this one featured articles.jsx. And this JSX is going to hold all of our content for our featured articles that we want to link from one page to another. So in our featured articles, we're going to have a few different things, including a little animation as people kind of hover over them. And each one of our articles is going to be in a card base that someone can click on. And we're actually going to reuse a lot of this in the future. So the first thing we need to do is import all of our required dependencies. So we need box, we need flex, we need heading, we need something called link box and link from Chakra-UI. And we're also going to need simple grid and text. Use color mode value as mode and chakra. And those are all going to come from Chakra-UI. So from at Chakra-UI/React. Then underneath that, we need to import image from next image. And I'm going to show you how you can use next image alongside Chakra-UI together. And we're also going to import arrow forward icon, and that's going to come from at Chakra-UI/icons. Now we've done all our imports, we're ready to start. So we're going to export const featured articles. And again, we're going to pass in data as a prop. And then inside of here is where we'll do everything else. So we can do a return here. And then we'll just do a box as we've always done. We can hit save and we can import this into our project. So back to index.js. And then we can take out all of this and say featured articles data equals block. And then import that at the top. So scroll up and import from /components /home/featured articles, hit save. And now that's ready to go. And now we can launch our application because we just installed something. And then we can start using that to create our featured article section. So our featured articles, just like the other one, is going to have two boxes. The first box being a section, and then the second box holding all the widths. So I'm just going to copy and paste this in. It's going to be the same as this top one here. And there we go. And then we can close these boxes out. So inside here first, we're going to create a heading. And this heading is going to essentially hold just a featured article section, whatever you want to call it. So I'm going to give it a color here, and it's going to be a separate color from everything else. So we'll do purple 500. Size equals XL. Margin on the bottom of 8. Font weight needs to be extra bold. And we'll just say featured articles. Hit save. And now we have this featured articles section in our homepage. So now we have that. All we need to do is create another simple grid, just like we did before, setting our columns to the same idea. So base is 1 and large will be 3. Spacing is 12 and margin at the bottom of 10. So now we have that. We can now use this data to iterate through. So we do data.items.map feature. So each one of these will be a feature. And then we need an arrow here, and then we can return something in here. So first, let's get the link. So const link is going to be /post/$ feature href. Now this will make sense. What we're going to do is instead of making them type out the full URL, all they need to do is type in the end part of a URL, and we'll take care of the rest for the user. So now we can do return and say link href equals link, key equals feature.href, style equals text decoration inherit. And then we're going to use this link box, which basically allows us to create a link around a box and use it normally without changing any of the styling. So we're going to use link box as article. BG will be small. Mode for this will be either white or gray 700. And let's close this out. Hit save. So underneath our BG here, we're going to need a shadow. So shadow equals base on a small and rounded on a small device as well. So small. And we'll just make that medium on a rounded. And then overflow equals hidden. Transition. So now we're doing a little bit of animation here. And then underscore hover, which allows us to tap into hover. We can do shadow small. We'll make it large, and on large, we'll make it dark dash large. And there we go. So now we have this section done, link box. Now we can do inside this link box, we can do a flex direction of column. And then inside of here is where we're actually going to do the images and things like that. So before I do anything else, we're going to override next image using Chakra again. So this image here we can do by using the Chakra factory that we've used previously. So before this return, we can do a const and we can say featured image equals Chakra image. So we're going to pass in next image. And then should forward props prop, and then just the props that we need. So width, height, source, alt includes prop. Inside the flex, we can do a conditional rendering here that says feature dot image, and then return feature image with a height equal to 200, width equal to 250. We can give it a quality tag of 100. Object fit equals fit. Alt feature dot title, and source will be feature dot image, and then we can close that out and hit save. Inside this flex, we're going to add another flex underneath the image here. So we can do flex direction equals column. Padding on the x-axis is only for a small device, so we'll just add 6. And then py will be 5, and that will be on all devices. Then we can do some text, and we can actually set the casing to uppercase. We'll set letter spacing to widen, font size to extra small, add some color here, and we'll do mode gray 800, gray 400 for a dark screen. Then font weight equals semi bold, margin on the bottom of 2, text decoration to none. Inside our text, we can do feature dot category, hit save, and now we have tutorial. Underneath our text here, we're going to have a heading as an H3. Size will be small, margin on the bottom of 2, line height equal to base. And inside of that, we're going to have feature dot title. And then finally, we just need our text for the actual description. So we can say text. And we're going to use a feature called number of lines. So it's no of lines, and set that to 2. Then a margin on the bottom of 8. And then color equals mode, and we'll set this to gray 600, and then on gray 400. And then we'll do feature dot description, hit save, and now we have the description. Then the final part that we need is the author of this to show up at the bottom so people know who wrote it. So underneath this text, we're going to add one more flex. We're going to align this one on baseline. Justify equals space between. And font size equals small. Color equals mode, and we'll do the same as this one. So we can just copy this and drop it in here. And then inside of here, we can do text by, and underneath that, do box and say text decor underline so that it's highlighted, and say feature dot author, hit save, and now we have and then underneath all of this, including the simple group, we're going to add one more thing here, and it's a link, and we're going to set it to /post, and that's going to be where our posts live. And do font size equal XL, font weight bold, color equals mode. Purple is 600, and then on a dark screen, we'll do purple 400. And we'll say span, view all articles. And underneath that span, we're going to use our icon to make a nice little arrow. So we do equals arrow forward icon, display, inline block, MS2. Hit save. And now we have this view all articles. And that's it. Now we've finished the featured article. If we make it big, it looks like this. It has a little hover effect. And if we add another featured article here and say my title is Tina plus Next.js, James Perkins, category tutorial, a really long course about using Tina. And then we do the link could just be to TinaCMS next. And then if we pick an image, we can select this one here, insert that in, hit save, and now we have 2. And it's looking pretty good. And then if we click this, this would take us to the post, and this would take us to the actual posts. So there we have it. We've built the index page. So now we've covered the index page and we have sort of a page builder that you can build out a bit more. We're going to start working on our blog now. So the first thing I want to do is add a format here, and I'm going to set the format to MDX. And that is so when we do page creation, it will be in the correct format. Then we have our fields here, and we're going to add some more. So let's start with our publish date. So I'm going to do type, set that to date time, and that will give us a time calendar picker that we can use. We'll call this published date, and the name will be date. Then underneath that, we need an image for the cover image. So we can do type, image, label, cover image, name is image. And then we need the author name. So we can do type will be string, and label will be author. Then we're going to need a category. And what I'm going to do here, once I finish this by giving it a name of author, what we're going to do is we're actually going to limit what categories you can and can't use. So to do that, we can add a string here. We're going to give it a label, and we're going to say, and we'll call it category. The name will be category, and then we're going to use something called options. And this essentially gives us a list of options. And the way we do that is by passing an array of options. So I'm going to have tutorials, thoughts, productivity, and let's say other, in case we have something that doesn't fit into that. Then all we do is give it a list true, and that will give us a list with only those options. Then another important part of any blog is tags, so we can do that as well. So it's going to be a type of string and a list as well, but instead of giving it options, we're going to pass in a UI component called tags. To do that, we're going to type string, label tags, name, tags, list, true, and then UI component is tags, and that will give us a tag selector. Then we just need our description of what this blog post is about, and that will be for sort of SEO or anything like that. So you can do type, string, and comma label description name description. And we're going to give this one a UI as well. So we can do UI component. And we'll give this one text area. And then instead of using this as a text area, we're going to use the rich text editor. So we can get rid of this UI component altogether. I'm going to type rich-text. Now this gives us access to things like MDX, a nice markdown editor, and in the future, we're going to add some templates down here, which will allow us to import MDX components. So that's the basics of our blog post done. Now we need to actually start looking at these posts and the index here. So right now the index does a query in two ways. So we have the static props here, and we need to be able to grab all the file names, which we're doing. So none of this actually really needs to change because that's what we're passing along. But in our slug, we're doing more than that. We need the title, the body, we need all the things that we just typed in. So let's quickly do that. So we got title, we need date, we need image, we need author, we need the category, we need tags, and we need description. And then we can use that data however we want. For now, we'll just delete this all out. And we'll just do a div here, and we'll just pass in one property. Let's say the title for now. So we'll do data.get post document .data.title. And that should give us the title. And then the only other thing we have to worry about is this. In our variables, we're passing in MD, but it's actually MDX in the future. And that is everything. So now we have all of that. One thing that we want to do right out of the gate is go to content, page, under posts. We want to rename this to .mdx. And we should be able to see this in our application now. So let's go ahead and go to the application and see what it looks like. So I've launched the application, and you can see this is a title. And if we click the edit button now, we have all these options, such as a publish date, a cover image, author. You can pick a category, productivity, and we can type in tags here. So let's say Next.js and hit enter, and it adds them all down here. And we can add another one if we needed to. So maybe this is Chakra-UI. And our tags stay there, and we can remove them as we so wish. And now down here, we have a markdown editor that has all the things we might need and a description. And we'll add my name as an author, and we'll add an image here real quick so that we have something to work with. And we hit save. Those will all now get saved to that file. That's all really cool, but we don't really have anything to look at. So what we can do now is actually build out the UI for this page so that we can have it. So this page is going to be a lot quicker than the other pages we've built, except from there's going to be one glaring obvious thing when we get to it. And I'll explain what that is once that happens. So here we are in our application, and we're ready to do our return and handle our data as needed. So first of all, what's great is that we're going to be using Tina Markdown. Now, Tina Markdown handles all of what I would call the problem children of using MDX or Markdown with a blog. You have to sort of figure out how to render it using Remark or MDX Remote or whatever, and then handle that either on the client or on the server. But with our Tina Markdown component, we do all of that for you so that you don't have to worry about it. So what we can do is say import Tina Markdown from TinaCMS /dist/rich text. So now we have that. We need to import all of our Chakra-UI components we might need, such as box, heading, code, text. We'll take Chakra and we'll use color mode. Value as mode from @Chakra-UI/React. We can hit save here and then word wrap it so that we can see what's happening. Then we need to import image from Next.image. And that's it for now. So now we have all of that. We can start working on this. First of all, let's just change this to slug versus home. And then we can start passing in what we want. So in our return statement here, we can say, so inside a fragment, we're going to do box max width set to 1080 pixels. And then the width set to 100%. We'll do mx equals auto. Margin on the top will be 2 and 4. And margin on the bottom will be 4. And px will be 4 as well. Then inside of that, we can have an article. And inside the article, we can have a heading as h1. And we'll set the color equal to purple 300. Size will be 3 extra large. Text align. Center. And margin of 8. Then we can do data.getPost document.data.title. If we hit save now, we should have a title that appears on screen in the middle, nice and big. Great, so we have a title. That's a good start. So now underneath that, all we have to do now is do Tina markdown, content equals props.data, get post document.data.body, and hit save. Great. So now we're basically done. We have the ability to have content, right? This is our content. Everything looks fine. Let's try adding a heading maybe, doing testing, heading, save. Weird. That doesn't seem right. Well, I did make a mistake on purpose here. So it should be data, not props.data. So we can just change that. And weird, the heading is not a heading anymore, even though it is a heading here. Now, this is a problem that you're going to run into if you're using Chakra-UI, or in fact Tailwind, because they override the default styles. So by default, an H1 here has been reset back to just normal text. So we can fix that by using Tina Markdown alongside its components. So to speed this up, I'm going to show you an example of how to do one, and then I'm going to copy and paste them in, and I'll leave a link to the overriding properties because there are quite a few, and I don't want you to have to type out each and every one. So to use the components, you can do const here and give a name component and make an object. And then you can pass in the object that you're talking about or the item that you're talking about. So in this example, H1, you can then pass the props to it and say heading, which uses Chakra-UI, as H1. And we can add some margin of 2. And then do a spreader and send the props down. And then hit save. So now we have this H1 component. While we're here, let's make an H2. Same idea, just set this to H2. Maybe you want to change the color or something like that. You get the idea. We change this to H2. Then to use these, let's make it components. To take this and go into Tina Markdown here and add in a components prop and pass the components along. If we hit save now, you can see this is now turned into a proper heading. So now I'm going to do all of the other ones really quick, and then we can start talking about maybe making custom components. So now I've posted those in, we now have access to use whatever we feel like. For example, if you make this big, we can now add, say, a link to google.com, and that should be a link. And we can also do inline code, so const JavaScript equals awesome. And you can see that it's been highlighted in purple. So there's one thing that I really want to fix, and that's images. Because right now, if we added an image from, say, our gallery and insert it in, it's very big. It hasn't been optimized or anything like that. So we can optimize this further by using Next.image. So let's quickly do that. So again, there's a link in the description to get all of these in one spot. And I'll make sure it's there. And you can also find the image one if you are following along at home. So we can just do image, which will be a standard image. We can pass the props along. And we say const blog image equals Chakra. Then pass next image as we have before. And do the same should forward props. So should forward prop includes height, width, quality, source, and alt. And then underneath this const here, we can then do return. And then we can use that, so blog image, and say mx equals auto, so it goes in the center. We can have the source, which will be props.url. We can set a height of 500 and a width of 1080. We can give it an alt text of props.alt. Object fit equals contain. And then we'll set the quality equal to 70. And if we return that now and hit save, the image got a bit smaller here and it's been optimized using Next.js. So that's everything that we could probably need. But I want to talk about one really big advantage of using Tina with Markdown. This button here allows you to embed components using MDX. So I thought it would be cool to build a video player. I make YouTube videos, maybe you make videos at home, and you want to be able to create a YouTube video player for your audience. So to make a video player, we're going to use React Player. So yarn add React Player. And now that's installed, we can use that wherever we feel like. So I'm going to make a component here, and I'm going to put it inside of a new folder called blog. And inside of there, we're going to make a new file. I'm going to call it videoplayer.jsx. And inside of that, we can do import React Player from React-player/YouTube, because I only want YouTube videos. I can then import box and heading from @Chakra const video player equals, and then we're just going to pass it in a single URL. And then inside of here, we can create a return and say box my8. And then a box inside of that box that's going to hold our heading. And I'm just going to say as an H3, and we'll text a line into the center, and we'll add a margin on the bottom of 4. And we're going to say prefer video content. And then inside of our second box here, we're going to create box with a class name equal to player wrapper. Now, the reason I'm doing this is because the way React Player works, it basically fills the space that it's in. So I'm going to create a couple of custom CSS classes to handle that. Then inside of that, we can do React Player. So React Player, class name equals React Player. And URL equals URL. The width will be equal to 100%. and height will be 100% as well. And we can close that out. Now, if I hit save here, all we have to do is export this out at the bottom. So export video player and hit save. So now we have all of that. What we really need to do is add these CSS classes. So to do that, we can just create a file anywhere and use that as part of our CSS. So I will create a folder here called utils, and inside of it, we'll just have a new file and we'll call it player.css. And inside that player CSS is going to contain our two CSS classes that we need. So we have player wrapper here, position relative, padding at the top of 56.25%. And then the React player is position absolute and the top 0 and left. Then all we have to do is import this. So we can import this at the top. So we can do import ... utils / player.css. And that will hold those CSS classes so that we can use them wherever we feel like. So we're almost done here. But as you remember, every time you want to have an editable field, you need to add it to your schema and a field that you want to be able to grab. So the way this works with Tina is in this section here, in the rich text, is where you can tell it what kind of components you need to use on this page. So in this example, we're going to create a new template. So underneath here, we can write the word templates. And we make an array of objects, and we give it a name. And we say YouTube. We give it a label. So label YouTube video. And then we give it the fields that we need edited. And there's only one field that we actually need to retrieve and edit here. So type string label, we'll say YouTube video URL, and the name will be URL. And that's it. Now we have the ability to use this YouTube video URL. So now it's in here, we actually need to be able to render it on the page. So if you go back to your slug here and scroll up, import video player, and that's going to come from ... components / blog / video player. And then we can use this as a component in this components object. So the way that works is we tell Tina how to use it. So underneath all of these other props that we have, we can say, okay, if there is a YouTube video, this is what you need to use. So we named it YouTube, so we call it YouTube, and then we pass the props in, and then we just say return, and then we pass in our video player, URL equals props.url, and hit save. And now our application knows how to use Tina Markdown. So if we go to yarn dev, so as you can see now, we have the embed button has a YouTube video. So if I click it, it adds preferred video content, and then we can put in a YouTube video URL, and then it appears on the screen at the correct sizing, and we can play it if we so wish. So there you have a way to use components with our blog post. Everything looks great in our slug. It has headings and a YouTube video player, and we've managed to style everything using Chakra. So we still have this index page which holds all of our posts. It just is a link right now. So we should fix that by adding in another component. The good news is that we've written a lot of the code already in this featured post. So if you go into your features post and grab inside of this section here, from link all the way down to the closing link, if we copy this, we can use this separately somewhere else. So copy that, go to blog and create a folder called featured post. And inside of that, create another JSX file called featured post. Now we're going to use this featured post to create a way for us to reuse the same component over and over again to show all of our articles in one place. So the first thing we need to do is import all of our Chakra stuff. So first we need to import box, flex, heading, link box, link overlay, and text. And that's going to come from use color mode, value as mode. And that's going to come from at Chakra-UI/React. And we also need to import image from next/image. And we'll also import link from next link. And then we can write export const featured post. And we're going to pass in some properties here. So first we're going to pass in props. And then we're just going to pass in an href. And the href is obviously going to be where we want them to go. Then we can destructure our elements that we're going to pass in. And it's going to be a title, description, image, author, and category. And that's what we're going to pass in from our props. Now, these are the same ones that we're using in featured articles. Then underneath that, we can do a return statement, and we can paste in our link here. Now, before we do anything else, we should hit save and start changing a few things. Now, we're using link here, but we want it to actually be href. And then any of these keys here that have feature dot, we can remove. So if you do Control C and then find and just do a replace, that will replace any of the featured dot, feature question mark dot, and replace those as well with just image or title or category, description, and author. So all of that's there. So if we hit save here, we just need to do one more thing, and that's to get the featured image that we used in our featured articles. So if you scroll up, there's a featured image here. Let's copy that and drop that in here and just add Chakra as another import at the top. And that will give us everything that we need to make this work. So our featured image here will still be styled with Chakra, but it will pass all of this to next image and optimize it for us. So now we have all that, hit save, and we can start working on our index page. Now I intentionally did this in reverse order so that we could talk about this query. So this query right now only gets this file name from the system, but we want it to get some data. So now we know what the data is because we need to pass it through our components. We're going to need this title, description, image, author, and category, so we can get those and pass those along here. So just as you've done before, you type the word data, open up some objects, and then say title, date, description, author, category, image, and hit save. So now we have this, we can use it wherever we want. So you notice that I added a date, which we're not using here anywhere. And the reason that I'm using date is that I can sort our posts before we do anything else. So let's work on sorting our posts. We can do const sorted posts equals this post list that we already have, dot sort a comma b, and then in the function, we can return new date based upon b.node.data.date minus new date a.node.data.date. And that will give us them sorted by latest date. So our newest post will always be at the front. Then we need to import some stuff at the top. We need to import heading, simple grid, and box from at Chakra-UI/React. And we need to import our featured post here. So featured post from /components/blog/featured post/featured post. And if you hover over it, it shows that we need to pass in a props and an href. So now we have that. Let's go ahead and launch the server. So now we're ready to start styling our page. The first thing we want to do is import our layout that we've created before. So import layout from // components /layout. And we can use that here and here to create our layout. Now we have our layout, nothing's really changed yet. So let's work on this heading. So now we have a heading. We should set this to H1 and we can set our text align equal to center, font size equal to 3XL, and then we'll add a margin around the whole thing of 2. And we'll just call this all posts and hit save. And then we just need to close out the heading. And now we have all posts. But you may have noticed that for some reason, the align didn't work. And that's because we can't spell the word center. And now we want to add a box around the whole thing as well. So we'll add a box around here with a max width of 1080 pixels with a width of 100%. MX will be auto, so we'll put everything in the middle of the screen. We'll do a margin at the top of 2 and 4, depending on the size of your screen. And then margin at the bottom of 4, and PX equal to 4. So now we have that. We can take this box and we can drop it around everything inside of our post. And you can see our post shifted down just a tad, just to keep it off the top of the heading. So now we need to change this div into something else. So this div is going to become a simple grid. And just as before, we're going to use columns and we're going to have one column for a small screen. I'm going to pass in null and then 3. So that means it will be 1 on everything but a large screen, which will then be 3. We're going to add some spacing here of 40 pixels and margin at the top of 4. We're going to take that and close out here our simple grid. So we just do simple grid and hit save. And simple grid is not defined because we accidentally imported the wrong version. And there we go. So now we have simple grid done. Now we need to work on the inside of this posts. Now first we want to change this from post list to our sorted posts. And then we can change the inside of here. So now we have this featured post. We just need to type an href in here and the props. And we just need a key for each element. So for the key, we're going to use post node.id. And then for our href here, we're going to use temporal literate. And we're going to do /post $$ post.node.sys.filename. And that will hold all of our data from our file name, and it will put post in front of it. And then we just need our props, which is post.node.data. And then if we close this out like so and hit save, you can see that we have the beginnings of our article here. So if we add a few more, it should stretch across the screen and we should get a nice view. So I'm going to quickly just add a random bunch of posts and we'll see how that looks. So here we have 3 posts now. And what you may have noticed is that the image looks a bit weird. So if you go to the featured image section here and change fit to cover and hit save, now it will look like it's not stretched and it will just fill in what it can. So if we make it big like this, it will look like an actual image. And as we shrink down, it will look how it's supposed to. So now we have our nice looking posts, and each one of these will lead us to a post. And here we can see this has gone to post hello world, and this one will go somewhere else, bye world, and finally this one will go to hi world. So there you go. So now we have a way for us to see a nice looking image and everything works as expected. So everything's done with our Tina project almost. We need to add a navbar so people can find things on our page. We need to fix some SEO, and then we need to enable the ability to add new pages so that when we have deployed this, we can add a new page right from our website and start creating a new blog post. So the first thing we should do is fix our navbar. So I'm going to write all of this in VS Code, and then we'll come back and add it to our page. So open up VS Code again, make it nice and big, and let's start working on that. So the first thing we want to do is add something to this navbar selection here in our layout that we created at the beginning of our project. So the first thing we're going to create is a nav link. So nav link.jsx. And inside of here is going to be either a desktop nav link or a mobile nav link. So you can import at the top just Chakra from @Chakra-UI /React. And we're going to use that to build out some nice looking nav links. So we're going to do desktop nav link equals props. And then we'll also do a const mobile nav link equals props, so that we can have two separate ones here. And then at the bottom, we can export these. So export const nav link. So we're going to export them out as nav link. And we're going to have one called mobile, which will be our mobile nav link. And one for desktop, which will be desktop nav link. And we can hit save. And now we can start working on these. So our desktop one, we're going to return. We're going to do chakra.a, and then we're going to do font weight equal to medium. We're going to do font size equal to large, display flex. We're going to align the items into the center, justify them into the center, transition so that we can have a little effect of 0.3 seconds. Then we're going to have a pos of relative, so position relative. Then on hover, we're going to do a couple of different things. First, we're going to set text decoration to none. We're going to set a color of choice. So for this, I'm going to do RGB 113 90 255, which is a purple color. And then afterwards, we're going to set the width equal to 100%. Then underneath our hover section, we're going to have an underscore after. So after someone's hovered and they've left, we're going to set the content equal to nothing, height equal to 2 pixels, background color equal to the same RGB here. Then position will be equal to absolute. Left will be 0. Bottom will be -3 pixels. Transition will be the same as we did here of 3 seconds. So we can drop that in here. And the width will be 0. And then all we have to do is then pass our spreader with our props in, which will be text, etc. And then we can close this out as such. Now hit save. Now let's quickly talk about this. What is this doing? So when you hover over it, there will be an underline that appears and disappears as someone hovers over it. So it will be this color right here. So choose the color that you want your underline to be, and you can drop it right there, and then just change it here as well. And that will change the color and highlight underneath, and it will just sort of hover in and then hover out. So now we have a desktop link, we should just make a mobile one. So for the mobile, it's going to be a bit different because we're actually going to build out a hamburger menu that then has some blocks. So for this one, we can do chakra.a, display block, text align equals center, font weight equals bold, padding of 5, font size equal to large, color equal to white, width will be full, on hover, we're just going to set the background color to a different color. And this just happens to be if they're like on a small screen that happens to have a mouse and isn't just a mobile device. And then we can just pass in our props. So ... props. Hit save, and let's just make sure we didn't make any mistakes here. We do need to close out here. So one of those, and remove the extra equals we had there. Now everything is done here. We now have a mobile link that we can use somewhere else. Now we have our nav link for both mobile and desktop. We create a new file in here called nav list item.jsx, and this is just going to have some motion that we can use. So first you can import Chakra from @Chakra-UI/React, import motion from Framer motion, which is included when you install Chakra. And we do export const motion list item equals motion, and then chakra.li. So for list content, we want some sort of navigation. Export const nav list item is going to equal some props that we're going to pass in, and then equals with an arrow motion list item variance equals variance, and then pass in our props. So we can do ... props and close that out, and now we can create our variance. So const variant equals exit. So on exit, opacity 0, y 4. So that's when you exit the motion. Then when you enter and the motion begins, we will have an opacity of 1, y of 0. Transition will take a duration of 0.3. And that's it. So now we have this variance that we can use, and we'll be using this nav list item somewhere else. For our nav bar, we also need a nav list.jsx, which is different from a list item. And we're going to need a few pieces here just to make this work. So we're going to import Chakra from @Chakra-UI/React. We're going to import motion from framer-motion. And then we're going to export const similar to what we had before. Motion list equals motion Chakra UL. So this was a list item here. Now we're doing the unordered list that we're going to be using. Const nav list equals props with an arrow, and then we're going to return a motion list. Opacity will be 0. Initial equals init. Variance equals our variance that we haven't created yet. And then finally, our props from our spreader. So props. Then underneath our nav list, we can create our variants. So variants equals, and we're going to need an init here, an enter, an exit. And inside of our init, which will be the first one we build, will be opacity 0, y of -4, display is none, transition, and then duration will be 0. And that will be our init version. Then we need our enter here. So for enter, the opacity will be 1. Y will be 0. Display, instead of being none, will now be block. And transition, so how long it takes to do all of this, the duration will be 0.15. And stagger the children. So any children will stagger by 0.1. And then finally, on an exit, it's going to be similar to this. So we can actually copy this, because this is basically when someone leaves. So the opacity will be 0, y will be -4. Then the display here, we can take out and say the transition should take 0.1. And then we have this thing called transition end, which is what happens at the end of a transition. And then we can put our display none back. And then hit save, and that's everything for our nav list. So now we can sort of use all of the things we just created in a nav content.jsx. And inside of here is where we can actually use the content. So we're going to import a few things here. We need box, center, hstack, stack divider, use color mode value, and something called use disclosure. Use disclosure. And those are all coming from at Chakra-UI/React. So we're going to import some icons from Chakra-UI icons. First, it's going to be the hamburger icon. And we're also going to have the close icon. And those are coming both from at Chakra-UI/icons, which we used previously for an arrow on our featured articles. So we're going to use those to do our hamburger menu. And we can also import all of our components that we created. So we need to import nav link, and that's coming from /nav link. And if we copy and paste this, we can speed it up a little bit. So copy, paste, and do nav list, and then nav list item. So now we can use all three of these together to create our items. So first we want to create our links. So in an array, we can create all the links that we want to use. So I'm going to use 2 normal links and leave 2 links to fill in yourself. So label, home, href equal to /. Then underneath that, copy this down. We'll do blog and do /post. Then underneath that, we'll do link 3, and I'll just put that as a £sign for now, and link 4, and you can fill those out however you want. Okay, so now we have those. Now we can start creating 2 different options, one for mobile nav content and one for desktop. So let's start with our mobile nav. So mobile nav content equals props. and we're going to use const is open, comma, on toggle, and that is from use disclosure. So what does use disclosure do? It has a bunch of properties that allows you to tell whether things are open, closed, toggled. You can get your button properties from it, and if it's controlled or not. So it's super useful for things like a mobile nav bar. So from there, we can do our return statement, and we can do a box, which will pass the properties in. So ... props. And we'll do z index equal to 1000 so that it's on the top level. We'll do center. And you might not have seen center before. Center allows you to center an item inside of its parent. So anything that child is, so inside of here will be in the center. So inside this center, we're going to have as a button. So we're going to make this center a button. It's going to have padding all the way around of 2. Font size will be 2XL. And we'll have a color variant here. So color equals use color mode value. Gray 600. And then gray 400. And then on click handler will just be on toggle. So using this on toggle here to make an on-click handler, and hit save so that we can get a nice spacing here. And inside that center is where we're going to use is open to check if it's open. And based upon that, we're going to use our close icon here. So if it is open, we'll have our close icon. Otherwise, we'll have our hamburger icon. And now we have that all squared away. We can now work on the actual nav list that holds all of our links. So underneath your center, go ahead and create a nav list. So nav list, and then put that position into absolute. And then inset the X to 0. Set a background, so we'll do purple 600. Top will have 64 pixels. And animate equals is open. We'll use the enter. Otherwise, we'll use exit. Now, if you remember, when we made this nav list here, one of the elements was these variants. And we're going to use enter if it's closed and exit if it's already opened. We can close out our nav list and use our nav list. And inside, we're going to have a stack. Spacing will be 0. So we want everything tight together. Divider equals, and we imported something at the top called stack divider. So we're going to use that. And we're going to give that a border color equal to white alpha 200. And then inside of that stack here is where we're going to have all of our links. So we can do links.map, link, comma, index, and then return our nav list item. The key will be the index, and then we just return our nav link dot mobile. href will equal link dot href and link dot label. If we hit save here, we now have this fully done, and we now have a mobile navigation that's going to use each one of these. So now we have our mobile nav done, we should work on our desktop. Now the desktop is a bit simpler than the mobile version, so we can do desktop nav content equals props, return, and then we can just do an horizontal stack, which is what hstack stands for. Spacing equals 8, mx equals 8, align, and we want them stretched, and then we'll pass in the props through a spreader. And then we can actually copy and paste this section right here, drop it in, remove the nav list item, and then just make this desktop. Hit save, and then we can export these out. So export const nav content equals mobile nav content and desktop nav content. And a comma here, hit save, and we're done with this section, and we only have one more piece of our navbar to create, and that's the actual navbar itself. So go ahead and create one more file here, call it navbar.jsx, and we're going to use this navbar, the nav content in this navbar, along with a couple of other things. So we're going to import box, flex, and the use color mode value and text from @Chakra-UI/React. And then we're going to import the nav content. So import nav content. That's from /nav content. Now we have access to our nav content. We can create our navbar. So now export const navbar equal to, and we don't need to pass anything in here. And we can just return a box. And inside that box, we'll return a box as a header. Height will equal 16. Background color will use color mode value. And we'll set it to white, comma, gray, 800. And we'll set the position equal to relative. Then inside of here is where we'll create a box. Similar to what boxes we've created before for our sections, we'll have a height equal to 100% of the container. Max width will be 7XL. MX equals auto. Padding start. Base of 6. Medium 8. Padding end. We'll set the base to 5, and we'll set the medium to 0. And then we can close this out. And inside of this box is where we will do our nav as a flex. So then we can use flex as a nav. Area label will equal site navigation. For screen readers, align in the center. Justify equals space between. And height will equal 100%. Then inside of our flex, where we can now set a box here, and this box will be on the left-hand side. And I'm just going to set it as an A, and I'm going to make it an href to /, and this is going to be set to home. I'm just going to put some text in here and say H6 font size equals 1.5 rems, font weight, bold, color, use color mode value, gray 400, and then comma white. And then we'll close that tag out and we'll just say your name. So you can put your name in there. Then underneath that box, we can do our nav content.desktop. And then we can do display equals by default on base. So on base, it will be none. So by default, we won't display this, but anything bigger than a medium screen, so MD, we'll set it to flex. And this base should not be in quotes. We can close this out. And actually, we can just use a self-close tag instead of a full tags. And then underneath that desktop, we can do the mobile version, and it's just a flip-flop of this. So if we copy this, Paste it here, change this to mobile. Base should be flex, medium, none, and hit save. And that's it. Now we have a navbar that we can use. So because we want this to show up on every page, we can actually just put it inside our app.js so that it renders regardless to what page you're on, and you don't have to keep remembering to use it. So inside your app.js, just go ahead and import that at the top. So import navbar from ... components /layout /navbar/navbar. And now that we've imported our navbar, we can just place it right here. So between the providers, we can place it here so that it displays on every page, regardless to if you're editing or not. So let's launch our application and see what it looks like. So here we have our navbar at the top, and all these home links do something. And as you can see now, we have this cool effect. And then if we go to F12, we now have this version that drops down, and you can see as they sort of transition in and out. So that's our navbar done. So now we have a navbar, we have all our pages, but we just have a couple of things that we want to fix. First, we want to be able to create a new page. And when we create a new page, we want to be able to redirect the editor to that page so they can start editing their work. And then, most importantly, some SEO. So inside of your app.js and inside our TinaCMS, we're going to use something called document creator callback. And this is how you would handle an on creation of a new document. So what we can do here is do on new document. So on a new document, the collection will be the slug. So that will tell it which one of these kinds of collections in your schema it's going to be. So we can pass it in the slug here. And then comma breadcrumbs. And now we have this, we can do an arrow and say const relative URL equals, and then use backticks and say slash $slug slash $ parentheses breadcrumbs dot join slash, and then we'll return that. So return to window dot location dot href equals relative URL. So now we have the ability to create and redirect somebody back to that page, but I also want to restrict the people from being able to create only on our blog posts. So to do that, we can do filter collection, pass in the options and say return options.filter option, and then an arrow and say option dot label equals, and then whatever our label was in our schema. So we called it blog posts. So as long as it matches blog posts, we can paste that in there. That's what will get returned. And then we can close out that and hit save. So now we can create a new document, even if it's deployed to Vercel, and we'll redirect you back there. You can edit your content, and then we can only allow any editors to use blog posts. So now we have the ability to essentially create new documents and be redirected. We should quickly test that, and then we can create some SEO, and then finally deploy this to Vercel. So we're back in our application. We can go to admin, and we'll enter edit mode. So we're now in edit mode, and to add a new document, you just open up this, click this little button there, click add document, select the collection, which is only blog posts, and type our blog post in there. So test 1, 2, 3, hit save, document is created. We got redirected to the correct URL, and now we can start typing title. We can pick a date and an author. We'll say this is a tutorial. We can add Next.js as a tag. Hello. A post body. And we'll drop an image in there real quick too. And hit save. And bam, we now have this document created. And if we go here, you can see that it's been added and all the details are there. So that is our document creation done. Basically, our app is finished. But the most important thing about any website is SEO. We want to be able to share our blog posts with Twitter or Facebook or Reddit or wherever and have a nice image show up. And Google will be able to read our documents and our data and make sure that we're actually giving them good stuff to go on so we rank better. So our final thing before deployment is creating our SEO. So we're going to use a new component here. We're going to call it SEO.js. And this is going to sit outside of everything and be its own component here. And we're going to import use router from next/router and import head from next/head. Then we can do const SEO equals props. And then inside of here is where we can kind of handle things. So first we can do a spreader here that says custom meta. And that's if we have any custom meta. Then we can do const router equals use router so that we can use the router. Then we're going to have our default meta here. So for a default meta, we need a title. So the title will be your name dash and then some sort of description. So like developer, writer, creator. Then underneath that, you need a description. So description of the site would be something like your name, homepage, for blog and content. Then underneath your description, you need a default image that appears. So I'm just going to paste the default image in here, and you can pick any image you want. And then underneath your image, you need a type. So this type is a website. And then finally, any custom meta that was passed in from our props will be passed along to this meta. Now we have our meta, now we can do our return part. And our return is a head, and inside the head is where we can add all the important SEO things, such as a title. So we'll do meta.title. So if you don't pass a title in, it will just use the one that is here. Then meta name equals robots. Content, we want them to follow and index it. Please and thank you, Mr. Robot. Then meta content equals meta.description. And that name will be description. Property equals OG URL. And that will be content equals. And then it's going to be the URL of your website plus the router as path. So for me, currently, that would be, here's my website, $router path. So whatever your website would be. Then link rel for canonical links. It's going to be the same idea. So link rel canonical. And then the href will be the same as this one. So we can just take this and copy it and say href equals this. And make sure we don't have too many of those braces there. And then underneath that is all different meta types. So it's going to be meta property equals OG type. Content equals meta.type. Then meta property equals OG site underscore name. Content equals, I'm just going to put my name in there. We close out that meta tag. And we'll just copy a meta tag down for a bit of speed here. And then this site name, instead of being that, it'll be description. So description, and that'll be meta.description. We'll copy this one down. And the next one will be title. And it'll be meta.title. Then this one will be image, and that'll be meta.image. And then we need some Twitter stuff. So these three here, we can actually copy and paste it down and change it from OG description to Twitter description. And it will be Twitter title and Twitter image. Then we just need a couple of other properties for Twitter to make them happy. We need Twitter card. So the size of the card we want. And for that, we want a summary large card. So we'll get a nice image and description when sharing. And then Twitter site, and that should be your handle. So for me, it's at _James_Perkins. So the last piece is our published date if we have one. So publish time, for example, and that will only happen on blog posts. So we can do meta.date and then we can return inside of that meta property equals article published _time content equals meta.date and hit save. And then all we have to do is export this out. So export SEO. And now we can use this wherever we want. So for example, if we go to our post page here and go to our slugs here, which is probably the most important place where you really want SEO, but you can add it anywhere. We can import the component at the top. So import SEO from ... components/SEO. We can take this SEO here and we can drop it in and wrap our article in the whole thing. So right here in our return statement, before anything else, we can write SEO. And then we can do title equals props.data. So we can do SEO and then title equals data.getPostDocument.data.title. And then the description. And we can do the same, but this time dot description. And then we can also do image. So image equals, and then dot data dot image. And on top of that, we can also do date. And then set that equal to, and if you look at your original query at the top here, we have data.date. So we can put that in there and then we'll know when this was published. So we get some extra bonus points from our friends over at Google, for example. So before we deploy this out to production, we need to do one more thing to make this all work. Now you can see here we have this if statement, but we need to make a change to our getStaticProps. So in start our getStaticProps right now, it has this empty object. So there'll always be data. So let's go ahead and change that to null, hit save, commit that change, and now we're ready to start deploying to production. So that's everything with this application done. The only thing left is to deploy. So the first thing you want to do is check in your code at GitHub. So go ahead and do that, and then we can talk about how to deploy this using Tina Cloud and Vercel. So the first thing you want to do is go to app.tina.io/sign-in and click the Authenticate with GitHub. Once you've done that, authorize it to be able to read any of your repositories. And once that's authenticated, you want to create new project. So click that button and say import the site. So select that button, say authenticate with GitHub one more time so that we can have read access to all of your repositories. And then here's the example app. So I'm going to select that. And we're going to give it a URL for the beginning of just this local host and click create project. So once that's done, you can see it here, click project details and copy this client ID. Then head over to Vercel, click New Project, and select My Developer Site Example. Leave all of that the same, except from here in your environmental variables, you'll see if you go to your app.js, there's this next public client ID from Tina. So drop that in there and then use your client ID from your app, paste it in, click add, and click deploy. Once that's deployed, what we should be able to do next is add in the Vercel site ID, and then we can show how Tina Cloud works once you're using it instead of localhost. So now it's deployed. You now have my developer site example.vercel.app. Take that and drop that in Tina Cloud so it knows that you can use that by clicking configuration, hitting comma, and then adding it in. So it'll be https:/my developer site example vercel.app, hit save, and now we should be authenticated to use with Tina Cloud. So if we click this and we go to the Vercel app, so once you land on your My Developer Site Example app, you can start using the edit mode and it will edit your site live, make a commit to GitHub for you. So let's go to admin. When you enter edit mode, it's going to be a little different. It's going to say to save edits, Tina Cloud authorization is required. On save, changes will be committed using your account. So when you click this, it's going to ask you to log in. And as I previously just logged into Tina Cloud to finish the setup for this, it automatically logged me in because it knew who I was. And then we can start editing our site. So we could change this to James Perkins. We could say, this is awesome. And we can hit save. And you'll see document saved, and that commit will now start to get built. There you have it. Get backed content powered by Next.js using TinaCMS. So if you did enjoy this video, make sure to drop it a like, subscribe, and of course, comment down below with more things you want to see in the Jamstack. Until next time, see ya.